When we look at the market on this week, there's a few things we need to talk about specifically on the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq 100. If we look over essentially the past 1.5, 2 months, we've seen this massive supply from roughly 11.8 to 11.6. And we've been rejected consistently, specifically on tech. I'm going to show you what happened this week, where I see us going, and the trades you need to be looking for specifically going into next week. The beginning of this week, we highlighted 3 basic bullet points. From these bullet points, I believe you could have made every single one of your trades, specifically on the swing side of things. I'm going to show you exactly how I traded this week, what I'm looking for next week, and everything in between so you know and are not misled going into next week based on the news. Before we go any further, I have to ask you to consider doing 2 things: liking and subscribing. Every day I post videos for you, showing you how I'm trading on the market so you are prepared Monday through Friday, every single day for you, the people. Also, going over my trades, I show you every day what I'm doing, what I typed out, what I was looking for. You can see almost $2,300 in gains just on Qs. You also could have caught all of this on Twitter if you were there as well. I'm always giving free content, so make sure you're following specifically on Twitter so you're ready throughout the day. Let's get into this. So when we look here, I want to talk about where we're going now. I'm going to go to our bullet points for a second, but I just want to give you this before we go any further at all. If we're looking at the Nasdaq, the main area you wanted to test was this 11.8. It's been a pain. We've been rejected. We shorted every single time. But I'm going to show you why I went long this time, why I decided to flip the normal trend that I've been having on futures and just across the broad market. First of all, every time we came into supply, we were getting rejected. We would not hold in the supply. We would automatically just reject. We can see it happening consistently. But something happened differently the past day and a half, 2 days. You got into the supply and you actually held the bottom, which is around 11.6. You would hold and buyers would show up and keep you in this area. And then ultimately today, you pushed straight through and flipped 11.8, and now you're looking bullish. We already know the ES and the Dow are extremely strong. That's information we already know. We've been following those. We already said those are already going. They flipped those a while back. You continue to go. ES here, you can see the 39.62 range. You held that level to the T as well. Now, when we're looking at this, there were a lot of key signs. But the big thing that I want people to realize when we look at Nasdaq specifically, before we look at anything else, and I love looking at Nasdaq because it's where all my favorite stocks are. I'm a heavy tech trader in the big caps, and they all rely here in the Nasdaq 100. What was the reason we were rejecting from the supply? The common theme was one thing. It was we were looking for a pivot and we never got that news, right? So we'd come up, we would reject, we came up again here. We had the Fed meeting. They told us they're not going to pivot, but they told us some interesting news here. And they told us all we needed to hear. They told us we need to see some data that gives us a reason to pivot. That's what they told us. And that's what leads us into the whiteboard and why I want to do these bullet points each week so you can be prepared. Now, we knew November 8th was election, so we anticipated the beginning of the week, bullish. We already knew. So the beginning of the week, you can go watch Sunday's video. I told everyone I was bullish. Number 2, so we got that one out of the way. The Fed rhetoric, which is going to be all throughout the week because there are a lot of Fed speakers. And then CPI. We're going to come back to that in a second. Now, if you wanted to day trade and you wanted to get information before this, you relied on DXY, yields, and then some of the China news coming out, but they really were lackluster with this. So you could really rely on essentially a bulk of these 2 things, yields and DXY, and they would have helped you trade throughout the week. For instance, if we go to the chart, just showing you what's happening with DXY. Well, DXY was not really bullish this week. If we look at really how we moved throughout this week, let me just show you. So essentially our week starts right about here. This is Sunday night, right when futures open. You're dropping out of the gate, basically the first 2 days, which again, my thesis going into this week with elections wrapping up for midterms, first 2 days, bullish. Wednesday, a coin flip day going into Thursday. Why? Because the market was preparing and trying to price in any type of action going into CPI, and we actually ended up bouncing at that level. DXY bounced right out of the key level, which again was on Twitter, so you know. So you could have traded back towards the downside of the market once DXY started to bounce, right? And you could also follow it up with yields. But then Thursday happened, and this gave us all we needed to know. We went over the article by JP Morgan. They said that we expect a 6 to 7% move on the market from a strong beat or a strong miss on CPI. CPI performed very well. It was a very good print. Very good information. Came out 7.7. We anticipated 8 flat. So a 0.3 beat was awesome. Perfect information there. And guess what happened from that? We rallied instantly. You went from 10.8 all the way to 11.8, a 1,000-point move in roughly a day and a half, with the bulk of this move coming yesterday, over about 900 points, roughly to the upside. It's worth mentioning also, that was one of the biggest days we've had in over 2 years. Okay. Now, we're also seeing follow through from that day. It's worth mentioning when you get a 6 to 7% day, the likelihood of continued upside the next day is slim to none. We got continued upside. Now, as we look at this, why is this happening? What's happening here? What's going on? Now, when we're looking at this, I want people to really understand the point of this, of where we're at and ultimately where we're going. Again, CPI gave you a reason to believe a Fed pivot. Before it was rumors, CPI gave you the news you needed to know. Am I saying a Fed pivot's coming? No, but it showed inflation is slowing down. And we have more information coming this week. Now, to start this week, I anticipate more overall green behavior. I anticipate more upside. But we look here on Tuesday, we have PPI, which I would anticipate PPI to perform well. PPI typically performs better than CPI, so I would just imagine, just saying. After that, Wednesday, not too important. And then going into Thursday, you get some job numbers. I believe job numbers are going to be some of the most important information and data pools coming on the market. I think job numbers are one of the only things that will hurt the economy going forward right now into the next Fed meeting. You need to see job numbers and unemployment rise. If we can see unemployment rise with better prints on PPI and CPI, that'll be very bullish for the market. And it would give you even a further viewpoint of going towards the Fed pivot side. Again, I don't believe we're at a Fed pivot yet, but I believe we have reason to actually go to that side of the thing because we haven't had it so far. I want to make sure it's really clear of how we're looking at this. So when we look at the market where we're looking like we're going, I'm anticipating a push up to 12.1 to around 12,000 flat. This is my area. This is where I see us going. On ES, like I said, I talked about this yesterday. When we were talking about this, I gave everyone a warning. Above 39.62, you're incredibly bullish. You flipped over, you retested, and you're pushing back up. I believe you have upside to 40.30, and then after that, it's going to be almost a straight shot to 41.20. Personal opinion, I just don't see resistance on the way up right now. There's just not that much resistance, and you have to look at what the market's giving you. Yes, it's my opinion. I know people might get mad at it. It is what it is. But again, when you come here, you know you're getting Tyler's opinion and nothing else. I also want to highlight, if we're looking at the going trend that we had, you kind of are trying to break out of this. I'm just saying. But the big thing to know here is when I'm looking to go long, I'm looking specifically at the Nasdaq because I believe tech is undervalued in comparison to the rest of the market. Okay, what does that mean? Am I saying that these tech companies need to go back to all-time highs? No. I'm saying based on indexes, based on Nasdaq, Dow, and ES, NQ has the most room to run. If we look at Dow, for instance, look at how much you've run. I keep saying the same thing. Great recovery. Awesome. Look at ES. Better, slightly worse than Dow, but still great. When we look at NQ, what's happening here? We come back to the chart. Not as great. You have 2 green days, but that's it. Not too much. So I believe NQ has more room. And I believe if you're looking at the market, that's what you have to be looking at. Now I can go into stocks I'm liking and everything in between, but that's my opinion right now on this market and where I see us going. Now, when I go into some of the stocks I'm liking and things I'll be viewing specifically on the market, you have to take some of these with a grain of salt because it all depends on how we follow through with indexes. I keep saying that. Like yesterday, I said, if you get rejected and you get pushed below 11.6, then you're looking for downside. But if you hold that level, then you're looking for continued upside. Now we got the continued upside. We traded further to the upside. So we continue to hold 11.8. In my opinion, these are the stocks I'm liking. 1, I love Baba into next week. One of my favorite plays right now. I think Alibaba has upside potential. Again, I typically cannot stand Chinese stocks, but I love Alibaba. I believe you have upside potential. First target would be roughly 73.3, 73.5. After that, I would quickly be targeting around the $76 level. Two clear levels that I'm looking at right now. They have earnings also next week. So I believe you're going to be safe with IV Crush because that's going to be propping up the IV there. China's stock market was also closed for a few days. So they're not really pricing what's happening with some of these stocks right now. Okay. So there's a lot of things happening. Their COVID policy is supposed to be easing up, but I'm not really running with it too crazy. This is one of the plays that I ended up buying, and I just like it. It was a riskier play, but I still love it where it's at, and I think we have upside. Next up, Costco, one of my favorite plays. Okay, what I'm going to show you here really quick. I'm going to look at the daily. Actually, I'm going to show you a few charts here. So I'm going to show you the indicator, though. This is the 200 MA right here. You mounted it today. Perfect, beautiful candle. Exactly what you want to see. I love Costco, has a lot of upside. Target is around 537 roughly, maybe 535 on the short end of the stick here. But I love where you're at, people. Extremely bullish. I would actually target like 532. Lots of upside here. Love where you're acting. You had a battle in the 200 MA all day. I believe you're going to see a lot of fireworks coming into the stock. Love Costco. You can look at some of these other stocks. Those are the two big ones I'm loving right now. If I had to give a runner-up top three, it's going to be Tesla. I think Tesla is just moving slower. They had some bad news surrounding them, and I believe they've established a low here. I think they have room to the upside. Again, I told you all yesterday as well. 200, 206, then we're going to 216. Three levels to look at. That's what I'll be watching for. Those are my favorite plays. Now, on the weekend, I want you guys to be watching something, though. I'm really curious about what happens here with Bitcoin. A lot of bad news coming out around FTX and all this stuff in between. I don't really want to get started with it. I do think Bitcoin is going to drop, okay? The question is, does this affect the market? I was just talking about it with Discord, and I don't think it will, but just be prepared to see how the market reacts because this is the ultimate concern. We saw it with CS and Credit Suisse, and now we're seeing it roll over into crypto. People were saying, Credit Suisse was going to go under. They were just over leveraged, and it's happening to crypto brokers. So, but the problem is there's not a lot of regulation. So I don't think the market's going to follow crypto, but it's just something we need to keep in the back of our minds. Going into this week, the last thing you need to be watching is going to be DXY. You're coming down to your range about 105.6. That's my big level down here. You need to also be watching these yields. The 10-year, you're back below 4%. The 30-year did not get back below 4%. Something to watch. If the 30-year gets back below 4%, I think we have some upside potential on the market, and you definitely want to be watching this. Looking at VIX, I also love what VIX is doing. You're finally getting some of that movement we wanted to see. We saw a big drop finally. We haven't seen one of these big volatile drops. Even with all that upside we were seeing on the market, boom, you finally got it when we had that big move from CPI. That's justifying what's happening and kind of showing that this upside is a little bit validated, if you will. So these are big things you have to be watching on the market and paying attention to going forward. Now, I'm going to be posting some charts over the weekend on Twitter. The link is down below, so make sure you're following. So if you want to see any of those plays, and I'll also be live tomorrow, Saturday, so everyone knows, around noon Central here on YouTube. So make sure you're following and have those alerts turned on because, again, I'm going to be live tomorrow. I'll see you later, guys.